The biggest problem with the 2025 Texas Longhorns might cost some people their jobs. What is it and who could be on the hot seat? Let's dive in on Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're locked on to the Texas Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, BK, Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you, everydayers, for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. We'll dive into the recent struggles of the Texas secondary and talk about a bright spot from the Georgia game. There weren't many, but there's one worth bringing up, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what has been the biggest problem for the 2025 Texas Longhorns. In a season of ups and downs and lefts and rights, in a year where pretty much the only consistent part of this Texas team is how inconsistent they are. There's one thing that was a massive issue on day one and has remained a massive issue all season long, even now going into Thanksgiving week. That's the Longhorns run game. The Texas running game is broken. There is no other way around it. The Longhorns rank dead last in the SEC in rushing yards per game in conference play. In 6 games against SEC opponents, the Longhorns are averaging 71.7 yards per game on the ground. South Carolina ranks second to last in that stat. They're averaging 98 rushing yards per game in the league. So not only is Texas 16th out of 16 SEC teams in that stat, they're not even close to number 15. The Horns are averaging more than 26 rushing yards per game fewer than anybody else in the conference. Wow. Staggeringly bad. I mean, I was taken aback by that stat the first time that I saw it. For reference, Texas averaged 153 rushing yards per game last year, and that includes the SEC title game against Georgia, where the Longhorns ran it for just 31 yards as a team. If you take out that game and just look at the 2024 regular season, Texas was over 168 per game on the ground. This year, again, 71.7, less than half. Yo. Also, if you remember, Texas was the only team in the SEC that was returning a 1,000-yard rusher from a season ago. I thought Trey Wisner coming back, going into his second year as the guy, and CJ Baxter and Christian Clark both coming back from injury, and year 2 of Jarrett Gibson. I thought all of that would make the Longhorns run game even better in 2025. Oops, got some crow to eat for that take. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Steve Sarkisian abandoning the run game too early at times this year. I thought he definitely did that against Georgia after Texas had 7 carries for 33 yards, including a 16-yard Trey Wisner run on that opening drive. The Longhorns only ran it 10 more times the entire game. In terms of just running backs, the Longhorns had just 10 running back rush attempts against Georgia. Trey Wisner had 9. CJ Baxter had 1. The other 7 carries came from Arch Manning and Ryan Wingo. That's it. It feels like the head coach has completely lost faith in his running game. And considering the stats that I just brought up, it's easy to see why. Steve Sarkisian ding-dong ditched the ground game Saturday night. And that's not the only game where that has happened. Texas has the second fewest rushing attempts in SEC games this year at 27.5, ahead of only LSU in the conference. By the way, that LSU team that fired their coach and now the governor of the state of Louisiana is getting involved because of how bad things have gotten there. Yeah, not really the company that you want to be keeping right now. Last year, the Longhorns were at about 35.5 carries per game in the SEC. This year, 27.5, second to last in the conference. Not good. Steve Sarkisian was asked about the run game on Monday. And to his credit, we've been critical on Locked On Longhorns about some of the things that Sark said on Monday. But to Sark's credit, he did acknowledge that the Longhorns running game just hasn't been good enough. Here's the head coach.
At the end of the day, we have to be better at running the ball. There's no question about it. Nobody's in our building thinking, hey, we're good. But we've got to find a way to do that. And whether that's schematically, whether that's personnel, whether that's, shrinking the plan, whether that's expanding the plan, there's a lot of ways to get that done. But we've got to find a way to gain yards on the ground to where we aren't just a one-dimensional football team.
He knows it. You know it. I know it. The American people know it. Texas has to be better at running the football. Can that happen in these final 2 regular season games? Let's cross our fingers. It's hard to confidently say yes. With the sample size that we have, we played 10 games already this year, and it's not like Texas is going to be able to trot out 5 new offensive linemen and 3 new running backs this weekend against Arkansas. The personnel is the personnel at this point. This staff has to try, and I know they've been trying. This run game not turning around isn't for lack of effort, but show me the baby. Show me the baby. I don't care about the labor. I just want the results, and the results just aren't there. Hopefully the Longhorns can find a way to get something going on the ground because it would really, really help. One thing that I wouldn't hate seeing this Saturday, how about more James Simon? Maybe not as your number 1 running back. I think Trey Wisner is still your guy there, but I haven't seen enough from C.J. Baxter this season coming off that serious knee injury to where I feel like Texas should continue to be giving him carries week in and week out. I don't really know how good James Simon is because we haven't seen him a lot in conference play, but it's something new, and you're not getting enough from what you're throwing out there. We're looking for answers. Number 31 could be your answer, at least part of it. Arkansas, by the way, ranks 15th in the SEC in rushing defense. They're giving up over 180 yards per game on the ground. Good opportunity for Texas to get it turned around. Now, the team that Arkansas ranks ahead of in that stat, Mississippi State, the Longhorns only ran it for 72 yards in Starkville. So even poor defenses have been able to stymie this ground attack this year. So it's no guarantee. Just because Arkansas has really struggled stuffing the run this season, ain't no guarantee that this is the get-right game for Texas. A&M, by the way, 7th in the league in that category. So middle of the road, but that defense is a lot better overall than Arkansas. Y'all don't need me to say that. The records tell the whole story. Unfortunately, this is another trend that is going in the wrong direction under Steve Sarkisian. We talked about this yesterday with penalties, how Texas has become more and more penalized pretty much every year under Steve Sarkisian. The Longhorns' rushing percentage in terms of the percentage of plays that they call that are runs, and also the Longhorns' yards per attempt on the ground have gone down every year in the Steve Sarkisian era. In 2021, Texas ran at 55% of the offensive snaps. They averaged 5.3 yards a carry. 2022, Texas ran at about 53% of the snaps, 5.2 yards a carry. 2023, Texas ran at 51% of the snaps, 5 yards a carry. Sensing a trend here. 2024, last year, Texas was right at 50% rushing attempts, just 4.4 yards a carry. And then this year, the Longhorns, 48.9% rushes, 3.8 yards a carry. Both of those Steve Sarkisian era lows. We're going backwards here, people. That is not good. Looking ahead to the future, the number 1 portal priority for Texas this offseason needs to be the offensive line. I think every Longhorn fan in the world agrees with that sentiment. And they are a huge part of why this run game isn't working. I know I've spent a lot of time talking about running backs, who should play, who shouldn't. The offensive line is the biggest reason why this run game has been as bad as it's been this year. So you've got to address that in the portal. But right behind offensive line, at number 2 portal need, Texas needs a difference maker at running back. I know Trey Wisner's probably coming back. C.J. Baxter's probably coming back. Christian Clark, James Simon, Ricky Stewart, they could all return as well. And I know the Longhorns have a 5-star running back committed in Derek Cooper, but I don't want to just hope that 1 or 2 of those guys can be great. I want to know that Texas has a great running back in 2026. It's too important of a position to ignore again. And also, next year, probably your last year with Arch Manning, I want to give that dude some help so we can actually see how good it is. I don't want him to have to throw the ball 40-plus times a game every Saturday. Getting a consistent ground game, that makes life easier for any quarterback. Arch is no exception. You got to have some balance on offense. Steve Sarkisian has had a 1,000-yard rusher every year that he's been a head coach or offensive coordinator in college football. It's a 13-year streak. Currently, we're 10 games into a 12, 13-game season, bowl game, of course. Trey Wisner leads the Longhorns with 375 rushing yards. We might not even have a tailback get to 500. Forget 1,000. That streak is more cooked than a Lincoln Riley brisket. This is the University of Texas, man. Earl, Ricky, Cedric, Jamal, Bijan, Rosie Leaks, Chris Gilbert, Steve Wooster, Deontay Foreman, Priest Holmes, Jonathan Brooks. The list goes on and on. There is a proud tradition of elite running backs at the University of Texas. That tradition needs to come back. Steve Sarkisian isn't getting canned. Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach, the offensive coordinator by title. I know Texas has had some good offensive lines under his tutelage, but man, this year has been an abject failure for him. Would Sark consider letting go of one of his best friends and a guy who's been here at Texas from day one? I don't know. I think it should be on the table. Chad Scott, the first-year running back coach. Would Sark let an assistant go after just 1 year? He did that with wide receivers coach Andre Coleman after 2021. Could Scott be on the hot seat? Early returns on his hire, not very good. Again, everything should be on the table. This run game failure is on everybody. It's up to you where you choose to direct your blame. I just know this. It needs to get turned around next year. It needs to. I think that's something we all can agree on. What say you? Your thoughts on Kyle Flood, your thoughts on Chad Scott, your thoughts on Steve Sarkisian, your thoughts on anything that I just talked about. What have you noticed with the Texas run game this year, and what's your confidence level that they can do something right on the ground against the Hogs or the Ags? All right. That's enough criticism for the offense. Unfortunately, another downward trend for Texas, this time on the defensive side of the ball. We've got to get to it next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back. So is college basketball. And there is no better place to get in on all of the basketball action all season long than with our friends at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, this is the best part. Even if you miss the start of a game, you don't get your bets in on time. FanDuel has live in-game betting. You can bet on who's going to score the next basket. You can bet on fourth quarter comebacks. You can bet on second half comebacks in college basketball. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. FanDuel keeps every game more exciting, especially when the Longhorns or any team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Oh, yeah, take advantage. Head over to FanDuel.com to sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And also a shout out to Doer jeans. Oh, man, I love my Doer jeans. They are so comfortable. They are so stylish. They are my go-to pair of pants here this fall. I've only had them for a few weeks. I'm already wearing those things incredibly thin. I love them so much. Why? Well, they're comfortable. It's the look of jeans, but it's the comfort of athletic and performance wear. It really is the best of both worlds. I can live my entire life in Doer jeans. I don't have to change clothes the second I walk into my place when I get home because these aren't comfortable and I don't want to wear them anymore. Now, Doer is perfect for every occasion. You can dress them up. You can dress them down. They are the best. They feel stretchy without looking stretchy. That's because, they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They're also made with Cool Max technology that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture. They are the pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. Check out Doer, the world's most comfortable pants. Once you try these, you won't go back to anything else. Get a pair for yourself. ShopDoer.com/LockedOnLonghorns. You're going to get 15% off your first order. That's ShopDoer, DUER.com/LockedOnLonghorns for 15% off. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Enough criticism for the Texas offense. What has happened to the Longhorn defense? This unit has fallen off a cliff in the second half of the 2025 season. In the last 3 games, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Texas has given up 34.7 points per game, which ranks 114th out of 136 teams in the country in that time span. Texas has given up 408.3 yards per game. That's 93rd in the country in that time span. Texas has given up 0.458 points per play, good for 104th in the country in the last 3 games. And then also the Longhorns have given up 91% red zone scoring percentage. That's 101st in college football. Not good. Pete Kwiatkowski's group has fallen apart in a way that we're just not used to seeing. In the last 2 games, Vandy and Georgia, Texas has given up 21 points in the fourth quarter in each game. And that, of course, came after the Longhorns gave up 38 in the first 3.5 quarters in Starkville. It's been egregious all around, but the pass defense, the secondary, has been alarmingly bad. I strongly believed that getting Michael Taff and Jelani McDonald back at safety was going to clean up all of the issues that Texas had in the secondary. And that group was going to be ready to go against Gunnar Stockton in Georgia. Yeah, in the words of Maury Povich, the lie detector determined that was a lie. Guys were so wide open against Georgia. It almost felt like Texas was playing a prevent defense in that fourth quarter, even though they were trailing. That's how open Georgia receivers and tight ends were. Like, I've sat on couches with less cushion than what Manny Muhammad, Jalen Gilbo, Cade Phillips, and Grayson Littleton were giving Bulldog receivers. It's crazy. And I know that Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba are gone, and they're having great rookie years. Their presence is missed, but everybody loses players. Texas lost players from 2023 to 2024, and they were able to withstand it. Easy for me to say, no problem. The best teams find ways to maintain an elite level even when star players leave. Hasn't happened with the Texas secondary this year. PK's done a great job of bringing in talent year after year, but the last couple of games has revealed a startlingly bad secondary. And I know the Longhorns only had 2 sacks on Saturday, but this is still a pass rush that ranks 3rd in the country in sacks. Like, I don't know how much more you can realistically ask for from the guys up front. They've been really good stopping the run. They've been really good from a pass rush standpoint. They're doing their job. The secondary struggles fall on the back end. Talked about Kyle Flood and Chad Scott potentially coaching for their jobs these final 2 games. You wonder if Dwayne Aquina and Mark Orfe are potentially doing the same. I wouldn't like to take you back because this isn't fun, but let's go back and look at the Athlon Sports preseason magazine ahead of the 2025 season. You know who Athlon ranked number 1 in their position unit rankings at secondary? You guessed it, your Texas Longhorns. Who did Pro Football Focus have as its top-ranked secondary going into the year? Oh, yeah, Texas Longhorns. Sensing a theme here. Currently, Texas ranks 84th in the country in pass defense. That is a long way from number 1. That's a long way from where they were last year. And again, this thing has been trending down. And the road doesn't get much easier for the Longhorns. Jim Kramer would be very bearish on this group right now. Arkansas may be 2-8, but they have the 3rd-ranked offense in the SEC. And they're scoring 34 points per game. And they have the 11th most efficient offense in the country, according to FEI. Then Texas A&M, the Aggies are 10-0. They're scoring 37 points per game. And they're right behind Arkansas. They're at number 12 in that FEI metric. If you've watched the Aggies play, they're not the most consistent down-to-down offense in the sport, but they might be the most explosive. And if you're not buttoned up against them, they could turn your defense into Swiss cheese. You don't want to get into a track meet. Both of those teams have dual-threat quarterbacks, by the way. Gunnar Stockton gave this team some problems. Arkansas and A&M, they've got some playmakers too on the outside. So while it's easy to look ahead to the offseason, the 2 rivals remaining on the schedule should command Texas's full attention. Hopefully the Longhorns can clean it up because they've got some serious work to do in terms of assignments, in terms of leverage. They got to get it all figured out before the Hogs roll into town. And hey, anything this team does to rebuild confidence this season, that means less work that they have to do in the offseason. Why not start right now? I think most people are going to focus more on the offensive struggles when analyzing the 2025 Texas Longhorns and why this season didn't go the way that we wanted. But the defense shouldn't be left out. And I hope the offensive-minded head coach doesn't ignore the serious defensive problems that have popped up throughout the year. And he won't have Anthony Hill, Manny Muhammad, Michael Taft, Trey Moore, maybe others. Those guys won't be there to help clean up these issues either. I just said let's focus on the next two games, and here I am talking about 2026. My bad. Hand up. That's on me. I would like to see a little more aggressiveness on the back end for Texas. The SEC isn't a finesse league, and I think the Horns have been playing too passively in the secondary. They don't need to play press coverage or jam wide receivers for an entire game. But from my outside vantage point, it feels like it's far too often we're seeing receivers get free run off the line of scrimmage, which takes a ton of pressure off the quarterback and allows him to make much easier throws. Soft coverage, blown assignments, missed tackles, too many of all three of those things from the secondary as of late. If that continues these next 2 weeks, 7-5 might be more feasible than we think. Let's get that cleaned up, please. All right. We always like to end on a high here on Locked On Longhorns. A lot of negativity today. There was one really strong performance. There weren't a ton against Georgia, but one guy who really showed out. He deserves some love, and I think he deserves your excitement for the future as well. We'll tell you who it is next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Game Time. How about 2 more home games at DKR for the 2025 Longhorn football season? If you want to be in the building for either or both of these great rivalry games, check out our friends at Game Time. Getting tickets, it's a hassle. Long lines, hidden fees, prices randomly jumping in your cart at checkout. You don't have to worry about any of that with Game Time. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best possible prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay every single time. It's faster, it's cheaper, and my goodness, it is way less stressful than any other way that I've bought tickets in the past. So take the guesswork out of buying your college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, Locked On College is the promo code on the Game Time app. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, final segment, Wednesday edition. Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. There wasn't a ton to like from Georgia 35, Texas 10 in Athens. But there were a couple of players who turned heads with the way that they played between the hedges for good reasons. One in particular, the true freshman defensive tackle, Justus Terry, the 5-star from the state of Georgia who shocked the college football world when he picked Texas over his hometown Georgia Bulldogs last year. We haven't heard a ton from him in his first year on the 40 acres because he hasn't played all that much. But in that sort of homecoming game against the Dogs, about 4 tackles and only 7 snaps for Justus Terry. A tackle on more than 50% of your snaps, that's almost unheard of. I don't care that it's that small of a sample size. That is incredibly impressive, especially against that team on the road. Justus Terry showed me a little something Saturday night. PFF gave him a game score grade of 92.6. That was by far the highest score for any Longhorn on Saturday. He was also the highest graded defensive lineman in America in Week 12. Again, small sample size, but it's absolutely worth bringing up. You see why he was a 5-star. You see why Texas was so excited to go get this dude in the 2025 cycle. Steve Sarkisian was asked about Justus Terry, the way he played, and also if he could be getting more playing time in these last 2 games. Here was the head coach on Monday.
Yeah, I'm really proud of Justus. You know, he has really come on, you know, from where he was a couple months ago to where he is today. It's a credit to his work ethic. I think it's a credit to Coach Baker and the work that they're putting in. I think it was great for Justus. He spends a lot of time, even now, periodically throughout the week on scout team. So he's going against DJ Campbell. He's going against Trevor Gooseby. I think that has helped his development as well. But he's surely coming on, and I'm very proud of him. That, again, here's a guy a month ago could have just waved the white flag and said, well, I'll wait till next year. But he's continued to work at his craft, and he's getting better. And he's a guy who is going to continue to earn more playing time.
So there's Steve Sarkisian, again, talking about his freshman defensive lineman, Justus Terry. The biggest takeaway from that, at least my biggest takeaway from that, expect a few more snaps for number 15 in these last 2 games. In all, Justus Terry has played only 46 snaps this season, but his PFF scores have been pretty good. 83.5, 6 tackles on the year, including 1.5 TFLs. Obviously not super impressive numbers because he hasn't seen the field a whole heck of a lot, but you're starting to see why Justus Terry was the 12th ranked player in the country in the class of 2025, and why he was the 2nd ranked defensive lineman in the country, and why Texas pushed all of their chips to the center of the table. Oh, don't get it twisted. This was an NIL recruitment for the Longhorns. You see why Texas went all in and upped the ante to make sure that they were going to get Justus Terry in town. Obviously, one game, you want more return on your investment, but starting to see signs of really, really great play. Justus Terry, 6'5", 290 pounds. Again, only 46 snaps this season. Some people may rush to conclusions and say, oh, he's been a disappointment. I've seen some Georgia fans say that. He's been a disappointment. He's been a bust. Hope y'all like him. I won't say that yet. I mean, let's remember Texas brought in 5 defensive linemen from the transfer portal this past offseason. 5 guys who had already played college football in the Power 4 at other schools. There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of experience, and there's a lot of depth in that defensive tackle room. And a lot of those guys are making money too. It's not like Justus Terry's getting paid and nobody else is. A lot of those guys got nice paydays to come to Texas. So there's a lot of stiff competition, and it's not like that D-line has been all that bad to where Steve Sarkisian and Kenny Baker and Alan Clark have been like, oh, shoot, we're looking for answers right now. That's been one of the most consistent areas on this Texas football team. So there hasn't been a ton of opportunities for Justus Terry, but I really liked what I saw from him in a hostile environment against an elite team on Saturday. That's a good sign for the future, and I'm hoping the future starts right now, this Saturday against Arkansas. I don't want to just be talking about 2026. I like to see more from number 15 in these last 2 games, but that was definitely a positive. There weren't many, but that was one thing I really liked from Texas, Georgia. All right. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. If you made it this far, number 1, God bless you. Number 2, please remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, all of those great things. That's how I get to keep my job. Y'all's support has been tremendous all week, all season long. Really, really, from the bottom of my heart, can't thank y'all enough for supporting Locked On Longhorns and what we are building together. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets. Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have you covered with all of your sports betting needs. They're giving out free picks every single day. They've got you covered. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. More Texas, Arkansas conversation. We will do a crossover episode with the host of Locked On Razorbacks later this week. A lot more Texas football and other big storylines from around the 40 acres coming your way right here. But that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.